Yes. Hi, Lars, and hi to all the people out there that are listening to this. Thanks for inviting me on and letting me talk. Yes, so we're going to talk today about job hunting and interviews and CVs and resumes and that sort of stuff. It's something that I have quite a lot of unique kind of experience at. Now, I'll explain why, but before I do that, I'll just give you a quick idea of my background and where I'm coming from in all of this. I'm trained as doing this thing called NLP, which is, should we just say for the sake of it, it's like applied psychology. It's taking psychological principles and ideas and patterns and programs that people run and working out how you can use them. And I'm a hypnosis instructor as well. So I don't do the normal kind of hypnotherapy or hypnosis kind of stuff, the swinging watches in front of people and telling them to heal themselves and that sort of stuff. Don't quite do that. What I do is look at how we use trance and hypnosis and those sorts of things in business settings and normal situations. If you're into sales and you've seen TV adverts, I mean, they use a lot of hypnotic principles in those, to draw people in and subtly change the way that they view particular products. That's kind of the sort of stuff I'm into and the sort of stuff that I've been specializing in over the last, 15, 20 years, or even longer, actually. So in that context, then, job hunting is quite an interesting idea, and actually how you can use these kind of principles in that. And I've been researching that for a long, long time. If I give you a little bit of history about how this sort of stuff happened for me, in truth, the first time I came across any of all of this sort of stuff, or that odd things were happening in an interview situation, was actually in my 20s. I mean, take it the right way. I didn't know anything about this at the time, but I had this real strange experience. What happened to me was I was doing a degree. I have a degree in engineering, and part of the system for engineering degrees in the UK was that you had to do industrial placements, work experience during summer holidays and things like that. So my university was very, very keen on me getting a job over the summer, and being in my late teens, I was very, very keen on going interrailing across Europe for the summer, which is what I prefer to do. So I was caught in this situation where I had to go for the interviews, and if I didn't turn up, or if I made a complete fool of myself in the interviews, it would get back to the university, and that may have an adverse effect on my degree and stuff like that. But I didn't actually want the job. So my teenage brain kind of went, well, actually, all I have to do is walk in and do a slightly worse job than everyone else that's looking for the job. So I had to think about exactly what I was going to do, and I decided that I was going to go into this interview with a really arrogant kind of mindset, and try and take control of the interview and actually switch it round and do all sorts of stuff that make it so that the interviewer just wouldn't want to employ me for the job. So this job, as it was, the job was for a research and development company, or a company that did a lot of research and development, and it was actually a job in their research and development department. So I walked into this interview, and I mean, it was a long time ago. I can't remember the exact words, but in principle, the first thing I said to this guy that was in the interview was, actually, I'm really good at what I do. Why should I work for you? The thing that does is it just completely switches around that whole thing about who's in control of this interview, and almost immediately this guy was justifying the position and his company and everything else to me. So I'm now sat in an interview where I've taken complete control of it, and I've got the interviewer actually trying to justify why I should accept a job that he hasn't offered me yet. That then went on to him starting to talk about some of the projects that they do in the company, and my natural curiosity, I started asking intelligent questions about some of the projects, giving suggestions and all this sort of stuff. So now all of a sudden he's got an active demonstration of the fact that actually I am good at what I do. the so the interview went on in that kind of vein, and to my amazing irritation, he actually offered me the job more or less then and there. Now, at the time, that was just me messing about and not really understanding how the world works, as you don't as a teenager. But a few years later, when I started studying these techniques and some of the ideas that you get in job interview situations, suddenly worked out that if I'd had half a brain, I did something incredibly clever there. In that I'd taken control and I'd actually given the guy an active demonstration of the fact that exactly what he was looking for was sat right in front of him. And that's some of the basic principles in all of this. But if we go back to this idea about background, I was once in a situation when I used to work for a large national organisation. It was actually the police, where we were doing. I was part of a group that was researching interview situations, and we were doing everything from hostage situations to suspect or witness interviews, right the way through to job interviews. And that was great, because now all of a sudden I had this large organisation, the resources of a large organisation, to go and research loads and loads of stuff. So I did lots and lots of things, like we sent out variations of CVs. So we would change formats and fonts and put colours in or take colours off and change names. It was almost like a scientific experiment. And we looked at all of that sort of stuff to see what was the most responsive kind of CVs. I went for literally hundreds of job interviews at every kind of level, from all the way from directorships to, working in a supermarket. We had all of these jobs, and I went to them changing some of the variables. I'd have different kind of CVs, I'd have different names and different experiences, just to see what we could do to, what sort of things make the difference to getting a job or being offered a job and not. The real interesting thing out of all of this is that most of the findings that we got from all of that still hold true today. I mean, all that research was done quite a long time ago, but a lot of the psychological principles that were based on those interviews were phenomenal. I mean, we had some really quite interesting experiences. There was one, I got offered a job, a very senior management job. Actually, it was about at the time it was about 60 grand's worth of job. It was a technical manager's position. Before I say the rest of this, you need to recognise that if you are going for jobs, I really don't recommend lying or falsifying anything, for two reasons, really. Firstly, in most countries, it's actually illegal, and you could go to prison for it. That's one good reason. But actually, another real good reason for not doing it, two other good reasons for not doing it, is like, imagine what happens if you've lied on your CV and you go and start a job. You're already on the back foot inside yourself. Do you know? But if you don't accept that kind of esoteric end of it, the other issue that I have with it is, what happens if you go for a job, you've lied in the interview or the CV, and then they offer you the job, and then at some later date they find out? Only one of two things is going to happen. You either lose the job right then and there, or if they keep you, absolutely all of your credibility is gone. Either way, it's not a good situation. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. Now that I've said that, one of the things I did with research was actually falsify lots of CVs. That's because I wasn't actually going for the job, I was just I was doing research. So basically, I had taken one of my mate's CVs, which was a highly technical thing with programming languages and all sorts of interesting stuff on there that I know nothing about, and I used that to get this interview, which was about it was a management position, about managing a team of specialists. So I walked into this interview. There were two people sat in the interview. There was the HR person, and then there was this technical manager who would be the person that I'd be working for. And they opened up the interview by saying, the HR manager said, well, I'm going to ask you questions about, life and general questions about this, that, and the other. And then I'm going to hand over to the technical manager who's going to ask you some questions of, very specific technical questions relating to your CV. And at that point, I'm sat in the interview chair thinking, I've been caught out. I can't continue this because as soon as they ask me one question, they'll know absolutely that I don't know anything. So the thing that happened was I said that to them up front. I said, actually, I faked the CV. I have none of the skills that you're looking for, and you can imagine. I mean, you could hear the tumbleweed going through the room. There was just this huge pregnant pause, and eventually the HR manager just turned around and he basically said, "Why did you do this?" Yeah. And I thought to myself, well, I don't actually want to tell them I'm doing research into job interviews and stuff, and I want to see whether I can recover this at all. So I just had this blinding sense of brilliance, and I turned around to them and said, well, I saw the job. I think I'd be really, really good at it, but I knew you wouldn't give me an interview. You wouldn't give me an interview if I, based on my normal CV. So that's why I lied on the CV, so that I could get in front of you to prove that actually the things that you actually need are wildly different from what you've asked for. So if you give me a few minutes to explain what I think why I think I'd be good for the job, then you can make your decisions. Cut a long story to shreds. I mean, it was a very long and quite hairy interview. And I did get called back a second time to go through this lot, but they actually hired me for the job. I mean, obviously, I didn't take it because of it's what I was doing. But if you think about it this way, what actually happened in that situation is they hired me for a job after I've told them that I'd lied on my CV and that I have none of the qualifications or experience that they were asking for, and I still managed to get the job. Now, I'd like to say that happened, that happened lots. It didn't. That's the only time it did happen, if I'm realistic about it. But my point would be that both interviewers and interviewees don't really know an awful lot about what's going on in this interview process. And once you get a little bit of understanding of how things are actually working, you can create an edge in the job market that perhaps wasn't always there. I'm never going to turn around and say there's a magic bullet. I mean, if you're 16 years old and you're flipping burgers in McDonald's, I don't expect you to be able to walk in and suddenly become the CEO of Coca-Cola. That's not going to, that sort of thing's not likely to happen. But there are some amazing results that you can get just from very subtle shifts in your mindset and just a handful of technical skills. So anyway, cut a long story to shreds. That's the sort of stuff I've done. I've worked in lots of organisations that have made people redundant, so I've taught them loads of this stuff and used them as guinea pigs to try it out and test it with all sorts of ways. And that's effectively the kind of things I do with job hunting stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've studied your job hunting program, and what I found really great about it was obvious that you did a lot of practical research, because it's not just maybe you're best known for your NLP books, but this is not just NLP. It's just all kind of practical advice, and you include the best of persuasion and NLP in it. So I think it's a really fascinating program.
Cool. Thank you for that.